Hello, I'm Stephanie Esposito. You're watching News 12 New Jersey. It's Sunday, April 15th. Here's a look at some of the stories making headlines around the state. Beau Biden has been in 3 hospitals in just 5 days.
Stephanie.
That's right. Well, at 5 o'clock, we introduced to you Helene, a woman who survived sex trafficking for more than 30 years. Now, she was first sold into the business when she was only 15 years old. And Helene isn't alone. Studies show that 85% of the women who are viewed as prostitutes are actually victims of sex trafficking. And that statistic is true right here in Philadelphia and the Lehigh Valley.
And a third man is on the loose. The 4 police officers involved were not injured. Back to you in the studio.
Leroy Durandi was on his first deployment. The 22-year-old Jersey City man joined the Army last spring.
And I'm Stephanie Esposito was live in West Kensington tonight. You talked to that woman about her escape and what she did, how she got out.
I did talk with that woman today, and I can tell you, she tells me that when you're faced with a sexual assault or the choice to jump out of a moving car, you choose the lesser of 2 evils.
The body of a 12-year-old boy was found right here at the bottom of these steps.
Well, so far they'll only say that it's suspicious, but I can tell you in the last hour, last time I spoke with you, the police were still trying to get in touch with the owners of these cars. All of the owners have come out and seen what's left of their cars, and in many cases it's a shell.
Well, you know, it's a really complicated call for our president. Not too much is expected to develop until this afternoon, because that's when he'll be meeting with congressional leaders. But we have a country here, Syria, that is in civil war. And President Obama says they've gone so far as to attack their own women and children with chemical weapons. But military action against Syria really has to be tactical here because of their close proximity to our ally, Israel, and because of the fact that our president would likely have to take action without the approval of the United Nations. That's because of Syria's very close relationship with UN power player Russia. The attack on civilians took place last week. Now remember, I told you this is a country that's in the middle of a civil war. But once you attack women and children with a chemical agent, the world pays attention. And President Obama says that's exactly what happened. And now he has undeniable evidence to prove it, although the United Nations is still looking into those allegations. Now, he blames Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The United Nations did send in a team. They were inspecting the blast site, but they have not announced a conclusion. And Syria, in fact, is just denying the whole thing and even trying to blame us and our Western allies for providing weapons to their opposition.
He pulled out a gun, shot him once in the back of the head. The decedent didn't know what hit him.
We'll get that sound to you a little bit later in the broadcast. But since Syria is such a close ally with Russia, which is on the United Nations Security Council, our president, if he chooses to take action, will have to do that without the approval of the United Nations. He does say that he's prepared to do that. 6,000 Syrians have left the country in the last 24 hours, even as we were doing reports this morning in anticipation of an attack. As for Israel, because they are also a part of this now, because they are so close to geographically to that region, they're staying put. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did urge his people not to change their daily routine, although many civilians did opt to line up and get gas masks yesterday in Tel Aviv. But stick with us throughout the afternoon. President Obama is meeting with congressional leaders, and that's when something is likely to be decided.
6,000 people have left in the last 24 hours.
Could you imagine? Yeah. Well, I mean, imagine if the United States aims our guns, and we do have ships and airplanes in that region just waiting for a command from the president. So if he says go, I'd clear out of there too.
Yeah. Well, the Navy says they're ready to go at any second now.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Driving around in North Wildwood, what are you seeing?
All right, well, if you know North Wildwood, I'm at First and Surf at the little inlet here, and this is actually the seawall. Check it out. Not much of a wall at all. I can step right up to it with no difficulty whatsoever. Take a look at the surf, though. It's really rough out there, and the waves have come up. You can see how far when you look at what used to be the dunes. They are almost completely gone, and we were lucky to find this little spot because there's actually some sand here, but as far down as you can see, the waves are actually hitting the rocks. And let's turn into the other direction so I can show you. I know we may have to move slowly here, but we're going to move over to where the lighthouse is. This is a little lagoon here. Look at how much water there is in this lagoon. There is no beach left whatsoever as far as the eye could see in either direction. Now, because of the way that it's kind of laid out, we can't see all the way down, but it looks dunes did their jobs. They prevented the water from coming too far up. But I can tell you, when we were driving around, there is plenty of flooding, especially North Wildwood up to Delaware Avenue. You could look all the way down to the ocean, and it looked like just a little extension of the ocean. I guess that we're going to turn this way so that there's no water on the lens. But thankfully, they're daylight hours now, and you can see what's going on. Because when we first pulled in, there was a downed wire that we thankfully stopped just in time. You couldn't see a stinking thing. No street lights, nothing. And we stopped to check out somebody's house for them and shine the lights on the house. We got out and we were looking at it, and the National Guard pulls up with one of those trucks that has wheels about as tall as I am, and they get out of the car and they say to us, report the news or get out, because we've already had some break-ins this morning. And I said, obviously we're not doing that, but you know, they're doing their jobs, taking precautions. They are watching your properties for you, but apparently some people did get in. So that's what's going on here in North Wildwood. I hear there's flooding a little further down as well, but as far as we could see, all the way from the ocean up to Delaware Avenue, no electricity, no lights. And what we could see from shining our headlights down those roads, it was just water all the way down to the ocean. So definitely some major flooding in North Wildwood, and Wildwood Crest, as you well know, is where they received the most water from this storm. And so that's what's going on in Wildwood. Mike and Chanel.
Steph, thank you for reporting the news. Now get out. Wow, people taking advantage of other people.
I know, it's too bad.
That's ridiculous. Thanks, Steph.
Stephanie Esposito is live right now on Route 72 in Beach Haven West. I can't believe the line. What's the scene like out there right now, Stephanie?
Oh, it's wild. And the line started, they were allowed to get in line at 4 a.m. It's now been an hour and a half. When we got here about 5 minutes after 4, the line was about a mile long. So I can't imagine what it's at now, an hour and a half later. But a lot of people in this line have a lot of anxiety. They've waited an entire week to find out what Sandy did to their homes. Now they have to wait another hour and a half, and these people are coming prepared. Check this stuff out. They're coming in with flatbeds, trailers filled with generators and all kinds of things. And if we could go to an aerial image of what we saw Hurricane Sandy do to the shoreline, that is why these people are coming prepared. They are expecting to go into high waters, sand, just a mess of debris, and hopefully not devastation. But we know that no one was killed or seriously injured in LBI, so that's a good thing. But people just aren't sure exactly what to expect, and that's why they are coming in prepared. I talked with one woman who has been waiting in line since 4 a.m. She says she lived through Hurricane Katrina, and this is almost exactly the same.
I'm hoping to see very little water. I have a very high elevation, and I'm right on the bayside in Beach Haven, about 2-3 blocks from where they said the break is in Holgate. So I'm pretty anxious, but I'm expecting the worst and hoping for the best. I lived in New Orleans for Katrina, and my daughter and I drove out that night, and the water was coming over the bridge, and it was really scary. And the aftermath was... This is every bit as bad as the aftermath of Katrina, except for the loss of life was worse down there. But as far as the personal property and the devastation, it's heartbreaking.
Okay, so if you are headed down to LBI today, here's what you need to know. You cannot get onto the island until 7 o'clock in the morning. And then when you do come, you need to show proof of residency. So you need either your driver's license, or if it's a beach home, some sort of utility bill or tax record. They are checking IDs. We've seen police here all morning walking up and down, checking people's IDs. And you can be on the island from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., but you will not be allowed to enter the island after noon. So entry hours are from 7 a.m. to noon, 1 car per residence. Don't bring kids under 12. They're not allowed in. Don't bring your pets. They are not allowed in. So if you are planning to come to LBI, again, entry hours from 7 a.m. until noon. You may stay until 3 p.m. Parts of the island have power and parts of them don't. That could be why they chose the hours that they did, hoping that people would be there during daylight hours. But do come prepared. Brings flashlights if you're planning on doing some cleanup. You never know what you're going to get inside of your homes. But 7 a.m., that's when you can start to get onto the island here. Karen?
All right, good information. Thank you there, Stephanie.
One person is still recovering from yesterday's early morning accident in Elizabeth. Take a look at this surveillance video. You can see a car crashing into the wall at the intersection of Division and York Streets. It's not clear why the car veered off the road. The driver was pronounced dead at the scene. His passenger was taken to the hospital. He remains in critical condition. Time is almost up for nearly 100 cats in Sussex County. By the end of the day, the doors of Claw's no-kill animal shelter in Augusta could close for good. The animals that are left without homes may have to be euthanized. The volunteer organization has cared for cats for almost a decade, but says they can't afford renovations that are needed to keep it up to code. For information on how you can adopt a cat from Claw's, log on to news12.com and click the numbers and links section at the top of the page. The family of a murdered 12-year-old Jersey City boy are renewing their calls for justice. Nearly a dozen loved ones of Hassan George gathered yesterday, demanding punishment for George's killer. Authorities say that George's half-brother shot him in the chest using his mother's gun. The mother, Shara Green Sims, is a former Hudson County corrections officer. The family is demanding that both she and her son answer for George's death.
I want someone to pay, to punish.
George's mother, April Alexander, says that she has a meeting with Hudson County's prosecutor tomorrow. She says that she'll push for stronger prosecution. And today marks the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. The supposedly unsinkable ocean liner was traveling from the British city of Southampton to New York on its maiden voyage when it hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic. More than 1,500 people died in the famous tragedy, including 7 people from New Jersey. A memorial cruise left England last week to retract the Titanic's route. Passengers held a memorial service today right above the spot where the Titanic went down. Thanks for joining me. Here's a look at the weather forecast. Have a great day.
Only on Fox, it's a story of modern-day slavery. People are being exploited either sexually or for forced labor.
So what was it like being a victim of it? Fox 29's Stephanie Esposito has a Pennsylvania woman's story some 30 years later. Stephanie.
Yeah, it's really amazing stuff. You were right. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery, and it's happening right here in our own backyards. Now, there are lots of misconceptions about it, too. In many cases, the victims end up getting treated like criminals. I spent the day talking with a woman who escaped after more than 3 decades in sex trafficking. She's one of the few to make it out alive.
He was the most gorgeous thing in my life.
Helene was 15 years old when she ran away from what she calls a dysfunctional family life at her home in the Lehigh Valley. Within a few days, she met a man who changed her life.
Somebody came along and wants me and loves me for me.
But the man whom she believed was her true love ended up being nothing more than a pimp.
He said, I have a good way that we can make money. My mind being trained at such a young age, I didn't really realize until just years ago that I was in bondage, that I was being controlled.
Helene was used dozens of times a day at about $50 per encounter. She quickly became trapped in a world where her self-esteem was non-existent and an escape seemed impossible.
You have to make a quota, and if you don't, you get beat. He beat me with a coat hanger. He twisted coat hangers up and made me sit in salt water.
The pimp introduced her to drugs, she says, so that she could be more easily manipulated.
He kept me inclined with the heroin and kept feeding my habit.
Forced to meet quotas, Helene worked rain or shine, even when she was pregnant with her 4 children. All the while, the pimp threatening that if she didn't do what he said, he'd kill her or her family. After 55 prostitution arrests in the Lehigh Valley, the pimp didn't want to get caught and decided to move.
I really didn't see anything. All I seen was hotel rooms. I wasn't allowed to go out. You don't stay in one area when you're a prostitute, because once you get busted so many times, then they know that you're working for a pimp. They tend to try to get the pimp.
Helene says she suffered abuse at the hands of countless Johns across the country.
This trick picked me up, and he had an army pin, and his door handle was on the side of the door, was broke off. I couldn't get out. He stabbed me up with the army pins. I wound up kicking the window out in order to get out of the car. It's a very dangerous life. Yep.
Why did you never try to get away, or did you?
I couldn't. I did try to get away. And whenever I got away, it was like somebody knew where I was and told my pimp where I was. So
They hunt you down?
yes. Yeah, they hunt you down.
But Helene got a unique opportunity to escape when one day her pimp was punishing her. He tied her to a bed for 3 days. She managed to call for help. After a violent confrontation with police, the pimp was sent to prison for slavery. But it was no simple way out for Helene. She also went to prison for prostitution.
It sunk into my brain that you don't have to be hit. You don't have to be beat. You don't have to be bound in bondage like that.
It was in jail that Helene became free. A Christian ministry came into prison and told her that she could have a new beginning. Now she wants her story to inspire others.
There is a way out. I'm living an example.
Now, Helene has been free from trafficking and drugs for 7 years now. She says it's a miracle, not just that she's alive, but she's also not contracted any diseases. Now, Helene works with an organization called VAST in the Lehigh Valley, and it's helping to push for legislation to give trafficking victims a way out. We'll take a look at their efforts tonight at 6.
Of a horrific story of human trafficking. It is modern-day slavery. People are being exploited, either sexually or for forced labor. So what is it like being a victim? Fox 29's Stephanie Esposito has part 2 of her report. Stephanie.
That's right. Well, at 5 o'clock, we introduced to you Helene, a woman who survived sex trafficking for more than 30 years. Now, she was first sold into the business when she was only 15 years old. And Helene isn't alone. Studies show that 85% of the women who are viewed as prostitutes are actually victims of sex trafficking. And that statistic is true right here in Philadelphia and the Lehigh Valley.
The average age girls enter or get involved with prostitution is 12 to 13. So we're talking minors from the start.
Babies in your neighborhood being brainwashed, raped, and moved across the country for one of the most lucrative black market businesses in the world.
I just went along with it because my mind being trained at such a young age, I didn't really realize until just years ago that I was in bondage, that I was being controlled.
Helene was one of the older ones, trafficked at 15 after running away from her home in the Lehigh Valley. A troubled upbringing, but a good kid, Helene fit the profile for a human trafficking target. She lost her virginity to a trafficker who pretended to love her, promised her the world, but then beat her, repeatedly sold her, and got her hooked on drugs.
One pimp said that he calls himself the street psychologist because they know it's a mental game. It's this, I love you, I love you, I love you.
Valley Against Sex Trafficking in Allentown provides support to young men and women who are trafficked. VAST wants to break the misconceptions that victims of trafficking are prostitutes.
If you have prostitution, you have sex trafficking.
85% of alleged prostitutes are really trafficking victims, free to walk the streets and solicit business, but trailed by their owner, who gets all of the rewards and has little risk.
You have people posing as Johns and buyers, and so the girls are the ones that are getting arrested. And the pimps are always in the background, but they might not be in the hotel room when it happens or when the girls get raided.
In January, progress came to Pennsylvania in the form of the state's first human trafficking conviction. Derek Alston and Amanda Scott pled guilty to human trafficking in Delaware County. But victims advocates like VAST say there's still much more to do.
In Pennsylvania, right now, there's SB 338, a national hotline bill that's trying to be passed, which would mean mandatory posting of the hotline number in bars.
For Helene, it wasn't a poster, but a greeting card that set her free. She was serving time for prostitution when a prison ministry scribbled down this proverb: "In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight." 7 years free from trafficking and drugs, and Helene says he is the only one who ever kept a promise to her.
If you're a victim of sex trafficking, reach out to someone. Don't sit back and keep it a secret. Don't turn around and think that this is what it has to be, like I did. Don't feel as though that your soul is worthless.
Victims advocates believe that there are countless people out there just like Helene suffering at the hands of traffickers. If you are one of them, there is a way out. Call the number on our screen. Now, as for that Senate bill that would make it mandatory to post trafficking hotlines in the bars and truck stops, it's currently waiting for a vote.
Morning, Steph.
Well, Molly started in the underground rave scene, but now it's wildly popular with mainstream teenagers and college kids. If you're a parent, you need to know about it. First, you'll hear what your kids likely think of Molly, and then you'll hear the truth.
You've heard of Mary Jane. Now, meet Molly.
novelty kind of like fun drug too. It's like something people want to do just to experience. People do it for that kind of euphoric, you know, like I said before, like cloud nine feeling.
It's a dangerous drug that's taken on an almost human identity. Instead of saying they've tried the drug, users like our unidentified college senior say, I know Molly.
Just like powder, and you stick it in your gums or you just put it in a water bottle. Like the first time I did, I just put it in a water bottle, drank it on a subway.
An internet search for Molly results in endless chat room conversations and YouTube videos of teens and 20-somethings acting like this at concerts.
You know, commonly talked about and commonly used, especially in the Philly area.
The Drug Enforcement Agency and several local police departments confirm that most Molly users are teens and college-aged kids. Many of them, like our student, aren't typical drug users.
It's like a special occasion drug. These EDM concerts are just perfect settings for that because, you know, you have like thousands of people next to you who are also on it, and you have like a low probability of like being like pointed out by a bouncer or the security guard.
But safety in numbers is not the only appeal. Molly is also the star of lots of hit songs, even getting a shout out from pop icon Madonna at a festival in Miami a few months ago.
How many people in this crowd have seen Molly?
Molly is short for molecule and sold under the premise that it's the purest form of ecstasy, pure MDMA. That, police say, gives many college students the impression that it's not a dirty drug.
A lot of people were saying that it's safe.
I would kind of agree with that. It's not hallucinogenic. You're not out of control. You're not like irritable. I never really considered, you know, to be like whoa, you can't do Molly. Like, oh my God, you know, it's a hard drug.
But the Ben Salem Narcotics Unit tells Fox 29 that kids need a reality check when it comes to Molly. She's dangerous and she can kill.
It's made from several different drugs, but the majority that we've seen in this area, it's been based with amphetamine or some type of methamphetamine. There's no rules to govern the process of making it. It's made in somebody's basement. It could be made in a car. It could be made in a storage locker. It causes brain damage. It can cause dehydration. Your organs can shut down.
Molly goes for about $100 a gram, and you don't need nearly that much to get high.
Like 0.2 is probably like $20.
You'd need much more than that to face any prison time. Another appeal for college-aged users. If a dealer is busted with a larger quantity, they can only be charged for the actual ingredients, which Ben Salem Narcotics say dealers often lie to users about.
What's in it? Because it's being made in a clandestine type environment. You don't know what's going to be in there. The only way we know what's in there is when we send it to the lab and it comes back. 9 times out of 10 around here, it's been some type of amphetamine.
Okay, parents, here's what you need to know. The effects of this drug only last 3 to 4 hours, and it has no smell. Narcotics officers tell me there are still ways to tell if someone was high on Molly's. First, they'll be slightly dehydrated and need to drink a lot and could become withdrawn or paranoid when that high drops them low. Back to you guys.
So much for parents to keep up.
Fox 29 Stephanie Esposito is live in West Kensington tonight. You talked to that woman about her escape and what she did, how she got out.
I did talk with that woman today, and I can tell you, she tells me that when you're faced with a sexual assault or the choice to jump out of a moving car, you choose the lesser of two evils. Now, we agreed to conceal this woman's identity. She agreed to tell her story because what she did today quite possibly saved her life.
He got in my car and basically said, pull off. But by the time I'm screaming because he got in my car and he said, shut up or I'm going to shoot you. And he's like, just drive off. So I drove off.
We're not showing her face, but this is the voice of a strong, brave woman. This 31-year-old was getting into her car to head to work from her Alney home when a man with a gun jumped in her passenger seat and then got angry when she didn't have cash.
You can have credit cards or whatever you need. And he said, well, basically, you're good for sex.
Driving down Chew Street with a gun pointed at her, this woman knew she had a choice.
And I knew it was a police camera, so I said I should get out the car here.
She jumped out of her moving car, which ended up at this Lukoil sign, and pounded on the door of a SEPTA bus. The driver didn't want to talk on camera, but he did let the woman on the bus, called police, and waited with her. The carjacker took off down Chew Street, and our brave victim says she did what she had to do.
I did not want to end up anywhere dead, decomposing in some woods.
Now, the police are still looking for that carjacker tonight, so if you have any information about this crime, contact the Philadelphia police. But as for our quick thinking victim, she's doing fine. She's a little bit rattled, and even as I spoke with her this afternoon, was discovering little bumps and bruises from the quick escape that she made. But she tells me that if she could do it again, she wouldn't do anything differently. Reporting live in West Kensington, Stephanie Esposito, Fox 29 News.
It's understandable she's rattled, but she's brave as well. Stephanie, thank you.